Discriminatory linguistic profiling is when people are treated differently based on how they sound or how they structure words together. And an example of this is the use of double negatives in other languages. In languages such as French or Spanish, double negatives are an integral part of how the language is organized. But AAVE is criticized for using double negatives. And maybe this is due to the fact that it's English, a language that most Americans can understand and have expected rules for, versus a language that they have no connection to and just automatically assume that that's the right way to say things. Racial profiling uses cues such as how language is spoken. And even though black language has been demonized, there's still a cool factor to it. White people want to participate in this cool factor without facing the negatives associated with it. And white people also feel excluded. So does that affect the reasoning behind their dismissive attitudes towards AAVE and other aspects of black culture as well? When AAVE was used as an option, as an educational option for white people to understand it more, they rejected it, calling it identity politics. White people want black people to conform to their standards, whether through religion or language, etc. So of course they would be against the acceptance of AAVE. And AAVE is also a dialect and not a language. White people want to differentiate it for their political agenda, and they use this as a form of resistance to black people. And I believe that broken English, what white people consider broken English, is worse because they understand it and they can see what they consider like the wrong way of saying things or doing things. And it might also make Americans look bad because America is supposed to be the greatest country on the world stage. And if people see that, oh, black people have been here for basically since the formation of this country, and they still haven't fully adapted to American cultures, so how would this look to other races or cultures coming into the U.S. and seeing this lack of adaptability and how this might affect them if they come here, and how these racialized attitudes could affect them? And on the other hand, sounding white helps you get ahead in life, but it also affects your relationships with other black folks that consider this type of language as a cop-out. Why would you want to sound like those who've oppressed you both physically and economically and emotionally for hundreds if not thousands of years? And I wanted to bring up the film called Sorry to Bother You, which encapsulates this idea, with the main character, Cassius Green, advancing significantly at his telemarketing firm by utilizing his white voice, which was actually voiced by a white comedian named David Cross. And linguistic prejudice has a severe impact on people from schooling, from elementary all the way through high school, through housing and employment, and even the justice system. And this has led to split personalities among black people when they talk or act one way at work or around a predominantly white setting, then switch it off when going home to black neighborhoods. And then a quote I wanted to bring up was concerning the use of AAV in the educational system, and how there was a myth of verbal deprivation that leads to the hypothesis of the genetic inferiority of black children. And this was touching on how white educators and legislators saw this gap in language between white children and black children as a sign that they are inferior genetically. And this would add credence to the hypothesis that has been used even from the 1700s all the way till now, that black people or dark-skinned people are different genetically. And I also wanted to bring up the immigrant parent-child roles that tend to reverse in adulthood versus childhood. Because even when I was growing up in this country, I saw my parents as my protectors, I guess. Like, they knew everything about this country while we were growing up. But as we grew up, we tended to notice the language barriers they faced and how they spoke in this broken English. And then I guess as immigrant children grow up, they tend to become overprotective. Because there have been multiple times when my mom has gone out and said that she was going to the bank or the store or something, and I was just imagining a scenario where people were looking at her differently because of how she spoke or how she looked, and I couldn't be there to like mediate the situation.